They say spies can be made out of anything, men, machines, even whispers. But few would believe that once, in the paranoid heart of the Cold War, America tried to turn a cat into a weapon of intelligence. The air in Washington, D.C. during the early 1960s felt thin, stretched taut between the opulent parties of Georgetown and the silent, ever-present dread of nuclear war. In this city of secrets, the most impenetrable fortress was not the White House or the Pentagon, but a stolid, uninspired building on Wisconsin Avenue, the Soviet Embassy. For the Central Intelligence Agency, it was a black hole. Their best efforts had been swallowed by it. Operation Goldfish, a painstaking attempt to plant a microphone inside a Faberge-style decorative egg gifted to the ambassador, was discovered by meticulous KGB counter-surveillance teams within hours. A high-level human asset, codenamed Argus, had been turned, feeding Langley a steady stream of plausible but useless disinformation for 6 agonizing months before being quietly recalled to Moscow and executed. The embassy's walls were electronically shielded. Its rooms were swept daily with equipment that could detect a flea's heartbeat. In a tense, smoke-filled meeting in a secure room at Langley, a frustrated CIA director, facing pressure from a White House desperate for an edge in the escalating global chess match, slammed his fist on a mahogany table. "I want ears inside that building," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. "I don't care if you have to hollow out a pigeon. I want to know what they're having for breakfast and what they're whispering in their sleep. Get it done." From that desperate, furious mandate crawled one of the strangest ideas ever funded by a government, Project Acoustic Kitty. The concept, initially floated in a speculative memo by the Directorate of Science and Technology, was audacious, almost poetic in its madness. It proposed the creation of a living, breathing surveillance device capable of slipping through the barriers that thwarted every other form of espionage. A cat, a creature as ordinary as a streetlight and as invisible as background noise, could wander freely where men could not. It could nap on a windowsill, brush against a diplomat's legs, or sit beneath a park bench, utterly ignored. If it could be engineered to listen, to transmit, and most crucially, to obey, it would be the perfect spy. Within weeks, a team was assembled under conditions of airtight secrecy in a windowless subterranean lab designated Area 12. These were not cackling mad scientists, but brilliant, patriotic men caught in the undertow of an existential conflict. The team was led by 3 profoundly different individuals. There was Dr. Alastair Finch, the lead surgeon, a gentle, silver-haired man from Johns Hopkins whose hands were steady enough to repair a human heart, but who privately wrestled with the ethics of the procedure. He saw the animal as a patient, not a platform, and kept a worn copy of the Hippocratic Oath in his desk. Opposing him in spirit was Samuel Kane, a brash, ambitious young engineer from Caltech. Kane was a prodigy of miniaturization who saw the world as a series of problems to be solved with transistors and circuitry. To him, the cat was merely a self-propelled, organically powered chassis for his technology. Bridging the gap was Dr. Robert Painter, a renowned behaviorist from Harvard. A cool, detached academic, Painter was fascinated by the challenge. He saw the project as the ultimate test of his theories on conditioned response, a chance to program instinct itself. "We are not violating nature," he would argue during their frequent debates. "We are simply refining it for a specific purpose." The initial work was gruesome. A series of stray cats, procured from city shelters under a vague veterinary research cover, became the unwilling pioneers. The surgical procedure, refined over dozens of attempts, was a marvel of biological intrusion. Dr. Finch, with a pained expression, would make a precise incision at the base of the skull. A tiny microphone would be nestled inside the cat's ear canal, leveraging the natural acoustics of the cochlea. A state-of-the-art battery, no bigger than a stack of dimes, would be implanted beneath the skin, its slight warmth a constant, unnatural presence. Then came Kane's contribution. A hair-fine wire, all but invisible, was painstakingly threaded through the fur, running the length of the spine and down the tail, which would act as the antenna. When the first successful specimen awoke, stitched and silent, the scientists watched with a mixture of reverence and guilt. They had merged nature with technology, innocence with secrecy. But creating the cybernetic organism was only half the war. The greater, more maddening challenge was teaching a cat to care about human instructions. Weeks turned into agonizing months, and then years. Dr. Painter's team built elaborate, life-sized replicas of the embassy courtyard in a secure warehouse. They used focused light beams, ultrasonic cues inaudible to humans, and a complex system of food rewards. The goal was to train the cat to approach a target, sit still, and listen for 15-minute intervals. The cat, a carefully selected female gray tabby chosen for its placid temperament and designated Subject F4, remained defiantly feline. It would perform perfectly in the sterile lab, but the moment a new variable was introduced, the sound of a distant truck, a passing bird, the smell of rain on pavement, its programming would vanish. One afternoon, during a full-dress rehearsal with actors playing the Soviet targets, Subject F4 paused mid-mission, became utterly absorbed by a sunbeam dancing on the floor, and fell asleep. Frustration in Area 12 was palpable. The battery life is 45 minutes, Bob. Kane, the engineer, fumed, pointing at the sleeping cat on the monitor. It just spent 10 of them chasing a dust bunny. We're not spying on the Soviets. We're gathering intelligence on the secret life of dust bunnies. Patience, Sam, Painter would reply coolly, making a note on his clipboard. The subject is demonstrating a need for unscheduled rest. We must account for inherent behavioral parameters. It's a cat, Bob. Kane shot back. It's not a parameter, it's a nap. We need to control it. You can't control a living thing, son. Dr. Finch interjected quietly one day, looking up from a surgical diagram. You can only guide it, and sometimes it guides you. Despite the setbacks, the project lumbered on, fueled by millions of dollars and the agency's refusal to admit defeat. Finally, after nearly 5 years, a breakthrough of sorts was achieved. Subject F4 would, with approximately 60% reliability, move towards the designated target area. In the desperate calculus of the Cold War, a 60% chance of success was a gamble worth taking, especially when fresh intelligence suggested the two Soviet attaches were about to finalize a deal to acquire sensitive missile guidance technology. The order came down from the top. It's time. Launch the asset. The day arrived. It was a crisp autumn morning on Wisconsin Avenue. Inside a nondescript Ford Econoline van, the atmosphere was electric. The team was assembled, Painter, staring intently at the park bench across the street. Kane, hunched over a console of humming electronics. Finch, looking pale and clutching a medical kit, just in case. They were joined by a gruff, cynical field agent named Harris, who had seen a dozen genius ideas fail and thought this one was the most certifiably insane of them all. So, the fate of the free world rests on a cat, Harris deadpanned, chewing on an unlit cigar. I feel safer already. The technology is sound, Kane snapped, adjusting his headset. The side door of the van slid open with a soft metallic groan. Subject F4 blinked in the sudden sunlight. For a long moment, it simply sat at the edge of the van, a living piece of classified technology, surveying the chaotic, unscripted world of traffic, pedestrians, and rustling leaves. Then, with a flicker of movement, it padded forward. The transmitters crackled to life. "We have audio," an agent whispered. "Faint, but it's there." A wave of hope, fragile and intense, washed over the van. The cat stepped off the curb, its tail antenna held high. It was working, and in that instant, the world seemed to slow down. The agents saw the yellow blur of a taxicab, its driver momentarily distracted, reaching to change the radio station. There was a sickeningly soft thud that no microphone was needed to hear. The taxi didn't even stop. Silence filled the van. It was absolute, profound, and utterly devastating. The only sound was the indifferent, mocking hiss of the empty audio channel. Kane stared at his console, his face a mask of disbelief. Painter slowly took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Finch closed his. Harris, the veteran agent, was the first to speak. He slowly removed his headset, looked at the horrified faces of the scientists, and muttered, "Well, I guess that concludes the field test. The target is down." The debrief was a quiet, humiliating affair. In a cold, wood-paneled office at Langley, the project lead stood before a deputy director with eyes like chips of ice. "Let me be clear," the director said, his voice dangerously calm. "We have spent 5 years and a sum that could have funded a dozen human agents in Moscow for a dead cat." "The technology was sound, sir," Kane stammered. "The platform was unpredictable." "Unpredictable," the director repeated, the word hanging in the air like a death sentence. "The project is terminated. All documents are to be classified at the highest level and buried. This never happened. You will all be reassigned." For decades, it hadn't happened. Dr. Finch retired early. Dr. Painter published obscure academic papers on animal behavior that were ignored by his peers. Samuel Kane, however, thrived, moving to the division that developed the first surveillance drones, trading fur and instinct for fiberglass and algorithms. Yet stories like this never truly die. When the declassification began, a single, comically terse report surfaced, and the legend was confirmed. But Acoustic Kitty survives in memory not as a punchline, but as a chilling metaphor. It speaks of a civilization so desperate to know its enemy that it blurred the boundary between curiosity and cruelty, innovation and insanity. The dream of an invisible, all-hearing presence didn't die with the cat on Wisconsin Avenue. It was simply reborn in silicon. It evolved into the satellites that watch from the heavens and the digital ghosts that haunt the internet's wires. Somewhere deep in the archives of Langley, a folder labeled Acoustic Kitty still rests. Yellowed paper, faded photographs, diagrams of feline anatomy annotated with radio frequencies. It is a relic of an age when men believed that with enough brilliance, anything could be weaponized. And perhaps if you listen closely to the silence of those halls, you can almost hear it. The faint, ghostly echo of a purr, half mechanical, half plaintive, reminding us that in all our strange and terrifying experiments, the subject we are truly spying on is ourselves.